So the back-to-back Nachas calls is that we're going to go from Rabbi Alterman to the next session is none other than Simon Italiaander. And Simon Italiaander has a little bit of background with this congregation also. So Simon Italiaander is now Rabbi Simon Italiaander. So first of all, I'm going to welcome everyone who's coming in now for the 11 o'clock hour. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background about what's going on, why we're doing this. It's really super. The whole endeavor, the 48 hours of Torah learning, Congregation Ariel was trying to think of something that we could do that wouldn't just be another banquet, and it wouldn't just be another money burner, but actually something that could contribute and enrich the entire community. And that's where this idea was born from. Of course, it modified and muted a little bit because just like COVID mutates, so did this idea mutate. It was dreamt up before there was ever any COVID. And now we're making it happen. Baruch Hashem, the most recent figures I've seen are that this has also raised $25,000 for the shul, which is a tremendous, tremendous thing. And it's really done so much good for the community. Not only have so many people learned Torah, but so many people have also had an opportunity. It's brought about all the teaching of Torah. Look at all the teachers that came. We started off with Rabbi Minkowitz on Monday night, Rabbi Vakrat, Rabbi Dickstein in the morning, myself, and a whole slew of others, Rabbi Foxbrunner and Rabbi Kashgarman and Rabbi Meir Cohn, and you name it. We've had so many rabbis, and we're going to have more and more and more all the way till the last hour tonight at 8 o'clock. So it's been a great thing, and I really want to thank everyone for participating. When you come in to this, you come in through a portal, which is ariel.raisegiving.com. So Raise Giving is run by a fellow named Avremel Chazanov, and Avremel Chazanov runs these type of platforms that help different institutions raise money, and that's what he's doing with us. So it gives an easy place for you to see the item and to make donations and to look at the schedule, see what's going on. So we thank them for that. There's also a fellow named Josh Needle, and Josh Needle is at broadspectrumservicesllc.com. And Josh Needle has been doing all the technical background for making all this happen. We thank him tremendously. We want to thank Debbie Kalbrisky, who's running Congregation Ariel while she's running this. So both of those are tremendous. And she's assisted by Basia Heinzelman, who's been feeding me information, including the fact that my granddaughter sponsored one of my classes this morning. Very, very touching. So I was really happy to see a lot of family members and people jumping in. And I want to thank our sponsor for this coming hour. This coming hour of Rabbi Simon Italiaander is sponsored by Mr. Scott Italiaander, and we otherwise will call him the Proud Dad. So let me just see if we have any other sponsors, because I have to, here we go. I'm a little behind. My list is a little bit out of date. And let me just see here. Yes, Simon is sponsored by his dad, Scott Italiaander. And what a great thing. And what a nachas to have your son here. And what a nachas for the whole shul, because Simon grew up under our very eyes and then went off to become Rabbi Simon Italiaander. And now he's actually going to be a teacher, took a job, and he's going to be teaching in Detroit this coming fall. Now, teaching is something, he's actually teaching in what's called a school. Many people might not be familiar with it. Once upon a time, there used to be a thing where people, to learn, they would actually come together and they'd go in to a building, and they would sit in rooms together, and they would have like a person called a teacher that would stand in the front. It was an old model, but I've heard that they're talking about bringing that model back this fall. So we'll see if all that happens. But anyway, Yashikrak to Simon. And right now I'm going to find Simon on the list of participants. He should be here somewhere.
I'm here somewhere.
There's Simon. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do for Simon is I'm going to make you a co-host.
Wonderful.
And now that you are a co-host, you can see, if you go down to the bottom bar there, you'll see all the participants, which looks like there's 16 of them right now. So I want to explain to you and to everyone else, when you come into the website, the first thing you're going to see is the first thing you saw.
Uh-oh, Dad.
Was a poster, and the poster said 48-hour Torah-thon. And the 48-hour Torah-thon poster was designed by Rabbi Michal Friedman. Rabbi Michal Friedman is our in-house graphic designer, but he's also a tremendous graphic designer.
Am I back?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to you.
I know what happened to me. It's our Wi-Fi. Too much Xbox in our house.
It's the old Wi-Fi problem.
Is it clear now or not so much?
I'm not seeing you, but let me see where I can. Hang on, let me see if I find you.
I see you.
Dad, how's the quality?
Oh, there you go. Hang on. Very good. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, hold on a second. Now let me remake you a co-host. Okay. Now you've co-hosted, and so just a couple more words of introduction, and one of them is, so Rabbi Friedman designed that 48-hour poster. When you see that 48-hour poster, you could click on play right there, and then you'll be watching all this on live stream, but you won't be able to participate. If you go down a little bit, to all those of you who are watching on live stream and they do want to participate, you can go down to the button underneath it that says, click here to be an active participant. And if you want to be an active participant, that'll take you in via Zoom. And then, although your mic will be muted, but you can always unmute and make comments and participate and talk and all that. So that's the deal. Now, as far as Simon goes, I'm now going to put the spotlight on Simon. And when the spotlight goes on Simon and he takes over the screen, it is now his class. So hang on, it just lost you for a second, and there you go.
Wow, I feel famous, like a celebrity. This is awesome.
You are famous.
Rabbi Friedman, I want to first thank you for that awesome introduction, and I would like to say that I am not so quick to accept the rabbi title. I want to keep my hair, and I've found that once people become a rabbi, that goes away pretty quickly. So you're doing pretty well though, Rabbi. So thank you. And also, you are way ahead of me in terms of Zoom etiquette. I actually made a slide about this. I'm going to show a presentation if you guys don't mind. Okay, just a minute. Okay, so a couple things before we even get started at all. Those of you who are joining via Zoom, thank you very much. It's great to see people and to see numbers and to see at least names or faces. If you are on the live stream, I'm gonna go ahead and make a pitch to, if you have the self-confidence to show your face, to join Zoom as an active participant. It definitely helps me as a speaker, and it's gonna help you, I think. There are a few parts of this Zoom that will be a little bit interactive. I wanna be totally honest, and that is, I am not a very good Zoom participant in terms of listening. I've been to many, I've been on Zoom for the last 3 months, both in class and serum, and it can be totally painful. And the worst thing to me when I hear is a 1 hour long Zoom share. To me, it's like, I struggle to just stay seated. That's why I'm standing right now. So I'm not gonna lecture for an entire hour. I think that would bore me to death, and probably you as well. It's equally as annoying when teachers ask too many questions to you over Zoom and just make you always speak up. And so I'm not gonna do that either. I'm not gonna bother anybody with too many questions, but there will be a few moments for input, and also I'll be looking at your faces for facial expressions. If I offend anybody, which I think I am probably going to, you can kind of make a face. Dad, you can give me one of these if you think that I'm going overboard. But yeah, so if you want to take a minute and join the Zoom, it would be greatly appreciated. And if you are too afraid to do that, then stay where you are. Okay, and mute's always great for the time being, unless otherwise stated. So if you are on mute, you're doing the right thing. Also, if you want to show your face, that'd be great instead of your name. Okay, another disclaimer before I start is if you have to leave the Zoom, I will not be offended. I'll just tell myself that you're having Wi-Fi problems and call it a day. So don't worry there. I know what it's like, just not being able to stand it. So do what you can. Feel free to stay as long as you can. It's going to be colorful, fun, hopefully relatable, and not too boring. And we're going to have a great time. I owe a huge thank you to a few people. One of them is my dad, my sponsor, coincidentally. I don't know how that happened. That was a good matchup. Dad, thanks for sponsoring me today and for believing in me and letting me get up and speak to all your friends and not being too embarrassed about that. I would be embarrassed if it were the other way around, so thank you. And to Rabbi Friedman, thank you for giving me this platform. It's unbelievable. It's a huge sign of trust. I have no credentials that establish me to be able to do this. So thank you for trusting me. Thank you for allowing me to be here. And thank you for building the shul that actually was my first exposure and experience to Yiddishkeit in the time when I did not know anything or much at all. Great story for later, but here I am, much to the credit of Rabbi Friedman and the Ariel community, which continues to be family to me, and I'm happy to be here. Okay, can everyone hear me and see me? Give me the elbow if you can. Okay, good. So we got Rabbi Yossi, Dad's here. Okay, plenty of people. Okay, so does everyone see my slideshow on their screen share? Okay, if it is too big for your screen, there's a green bar on top. You can change the screen fitting to fit to screen if you're not seeing the whole thing, if it's too zoomed in. And if it's taking over your whole screen, you can press escape and make it into a smaller screen. So just for your own navigation of the slides. So the topic I chose for today is, I call it Eretz Canine, like Eretz Canaan, but different. And it is the many, almost endless questions that dog owners and cat owners, for that matter, have in halacha. There are all kinds of myths that we have overheard about petting your dog, petting other people's dog, walking your dog, eruv, no eruv, feeding chametz, a handful of issues. And the question you're asking yourself, or I'm asking myself also, is why am I doing this now? Is this a Shavuos topic? Is this something which is relevant to any holidays coming up coming up now in the near future? And the truth is, there is a real. Well, first of all, Rabbi Friedman took over this for me. But the first thing I do when I'm in a Zoom share with somebody who's teaching is I Google them. Part of what keeps me entertained. So don't Google me. I'm not that important. Nothing is on Google about me. So a few cliff notes. I grew up in Dunwoody. I went to Weber. Spent a few years in Israel and YU. And as Rabbi Friedman already mentioned, I'm starting my first career just in 2 months, in Detroit. Beautiful city of Detroit, Michigan. I'm going for the weather, and I'm thrilled. So thanks for being here, and I'm looking forward to this opportunity. Okay, here are my table of contents. These are what I have found to be the main issues that people are talking about online in halacha. There's the fact of whether you can even own a dog at all, feeding a dog, when and what. Shabbos issues, there are a number of them. Spaying and neutering, something I didn't know about, but big issue. Bringing dogs into shul for the purpose of either guide dogs or the like. And then at the end, I added a section called Hashkafa, which is philosophies about dogs, which is really separate from any of the technical halachas, but it's the way in which pet ownership or dog ownership is viewed by the Gedolei HaPoskim, by Torah scholars, and that's actually as interesting as anything else. And also I throw in my own opinion in there. Final disclaimer that I just want to make sure everyone's aware of. Everything that you're going to see here is sourced from other articles online you can find very easily. I just compiled some of the topics that I thought were interesting and that I think will be helpful. I am not a posek, therefore I don't decide halacha, and nothing in here is my own creation in terms of halachic decisions. So everything here is not my own, except at the end when I'm giving my own opinion, and no one can stop me because you're all on mute. So don't even try. Okay, why? Why am I doing this? Back to that question. If you see this this just cursory search of headlines on animals and coronavirus, there was a surge of adoptions that have gone on in the last 3 months. Dogs, cats, you name it. Shelters that previously have been begging people to adopt pets are now running empty. And many call that beautiful, and it is pretty amazing, and it's nice. But more close to home, during this time, we also got a dog. We, the Italiaander house on Mary Lane, we really inherited a dog. It's a story you can ask my dad for later, a good story. But she's actually, she's on the bed, there she is. Yeah. Okay, so when she was brought to our house by one of my brothers during Pesach, actually, which was a nightmare in itself, figuring out chametz food and stuff. But when she was brought to us, I was pretty much against the idea of having a dog in the house. I love animals, but I've become very, I guess, pretty stark toward dogs. And after a couple of days here, really a couple of weeks here, me and Chloe, her name, we really bonded. And so as we bonded, it brought up all of these issues, and not just issues about Shabbos and issues of feeding and the halachas, but also issues of like, is this the right move for someone who is trying to be a ben Torah, who's trying to be someone who follows Torah? Like, are dogs part of that realm? Because on the one hand, if you look around certain communities in the country or even in the world, Brooklyn, for example. And by the way, if anyone here is from Brooklyn, I apologize in advance. I'm gonna rip on Brooklyn a lot just because it's an easy target, and their accents are weird. But dogs, or as they call them, dogs. So dogs in Brooklyn are like demons, and they're not very accepted in the community, and it's almost as if it seems like it's against halacha to own a dog. It's not common. Whereas in places like Atlanta, Charleston, Dallas, more out-of-town communities where culturally dogs are more acceptable, you'll find a lot more in the Jewish community. So there's kind of this what's the truth? Are we governed by culture around us, or is there a real Torah hashkafa on dogs? Okay. Owning a dog. You know what? Okay, audible. I'm going to share a different screen right now. Okay, did everybody see a white screen in front of them? Okay, so if you have in front of you a smartphone that you're not using for this Zoom, on the top of the page, there is a URL, menti.com, and there's a code. I want to do a little bit of voting to see who I'm talking to and where you stand with pets. So if you would either take a smartphone nearby or just open up a new screen on your computer and type in menti.com, and it'll ask you for a code. Let's see if we can give a minute to do that. Okay, menti.com, and code 124593, and you should be on board. Okay, anybody on board yet? Dad, did it work for you? We'll start with that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So what I'd like to do is, I have just 2 questions. We'll see how this works. Okay, first question is, which of the following, if you see on your screen, on your phone or on your computer, which of the following describes your current situation? There are 4 different options that I put up there, and put in which option best describes you. Okay, we got a couple of votes. All right, we got 2. I guess popular technology. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and show the results for the 2 people, one of them being my dad probably, who voted. And okay, split in half. Both of the viewers who voted have pets. One of them is happy with it, and one of them is not happy with their pet. Okay. Okay. That works for now, and that helps a lot. Oh. We have a third voter coming out of nowhere. Okay, he doesn't have pets, which they did. Okay, so I'm going to conclude from this that this crowd mostly either has pets or is somewhat preferable toward pets. Oh, we have a hater over here in the yellow. Who's our hater? Okay, guys, well done. I'm going to close the voting now, and we're going to go back to the presentation. Okay, owning a dog. So this is really the first stop that encompasses the entire topic, which is that, is there a problem with just having a dog in your home? Now, you'd be surprised because, first of all, there's precedent in halakhic literature that Ashkenazi Jews have owned household pets like dogs for many centuries. So it's been done before, and it's been being done for a long time, not new to our society, but we have a real fundamental machlokes in the Gemara. Within the same Masechta, we have two Gemaras, both in Bava Kama, that seem to have differing opinions. So one of them, Bava Kama, Tesvav Hamabez, Rabbi Natan in the Gemara says, and quotes halacha, that one who raises a kelev ra, which is defined as an evil dog, violates an isser deoraisa of lo tasim dam bevesecha. Do not place blood in your house. Now that isser, that mitzvah basically is quoted by the mitzvah of ma'akeh, of building a fence around one's roof that's flat, also for the purpose of avoiding bloodshed in someone's house. So having a dog which is potentially dangerous could be a violation of having a dangerous item in your house, which could kill somebody, God forbid. Now, notice Rav Natan defines dog as a kelev ra. And from that, Rabbi Yishmael in the Gemara itself qualifies that, says, by the way, a kofri dog, which Rashi defines as either a small dog or a hunting dog, dogs that are known to be non-dangerous. A kofri dog is permitted to own. So that's one Gemara. Later on in the Masechta, 179 Amud Beis, as well as 83a, the Gemara says that across the board it's forbidden to own a dog unless it is secured by chains. It has to be locked up sufficiently in order to own a dog halachically. And furthermore, this is more of a shkafic point the Gemara makes, the rabbis basically they cursed everybody who owned a dog. We'll see why in a moment. But we see it doesn't seem to make a distinction between a good dog and an evil dog. It seems like this later Gemara says dogs in general are basically forbidden to be kept unless they are fully secured. How do we poskin? The Shulchan Aruch, which is halacha that we identify with the most as Ashkenazim, as Jews, is that even the second Gemara, which seems not to distinguish between the two dogs, are only referring to evil dogs. So evil dogs, kelev ra, are the animals which are forbidden or at least highly discouraged to own. And tame dogs, the kofri dogs, are the ones that are permitted to own. We'll get to this, Rav Yaakov Emden, actually. We'll get to him later. He believes that across the board, dogs should not be owned by humans in any form. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, what is an evil dog? Many of us might call our own dogs evil dogs. Rashi on the Mishnah of Bava Kama, in that same Masechta, writes it's a dog that barks and bites, and what it does is it causes women who are pregnant to miscarry. So God forbid. The Gemara quotes two incidents actually where this happened, where the fear of a dog barking caused a miscarriage. Now you're probably asking yourself, like, who would own a dog that's evil? Like, it's just not, it doesn't make sense. It's not so not so practical. The truth is that my family, when we were growing up, we had a family friend that we used to go visit out in Douglasville every year or so. And they had this dog that literally, if it wasn't locked in a room when we got there, it would tear us to pieces. And I can never figure out why they would have a dog that literally is deadly. So people do it sometimes. If you live on Mary Lane, you know what I'm talking about. There are also kelev ra somewhere on our street. I'll stop there. but barks and bites. So the discussion among the poskim ensues on what is it, barking or biting? Is it if it only barks and bites? Is it a kelav ra? But if it only bites, only barks, it's not. So that gets discussed for a while, and what ends up is a dog who bites, who is known to bite, not proper to own. The Yam Shel Shlomo, or Shlomo Luria, writes that when you have a dog, a kofri dog, as Rashi mentioned, which is a tame dog that people know it's not really dangerous. It's not going to damage anybody. Even if it barks, which it does not cause any harm to a woman or to anybody passing by. So as long as you have a dog of a breed, of a species, basically that's known to us as non-harmful, even its bark will not affect anyone or anything. So from the articles that I've been perusing, of Howard Jackson, who has a very comprehensive article that I've been using for this year, he says one may own a dog that doesn't pose a danger to people or property. Now, somewhat subjective. Last week we had a FedEx delivery man come to our door. He actually came while I was davening, and he left one of those stickies. So there's notes. It says, "I missed you. I'll be back later." And I ran out, and I was about to fill in, and I was embarrassed, kind of. And I was like, "Oh, I'm right here. Like, hey, give me my package, please." So he brings it to me, and Chloe runs outside, and this FedEx man like freezes, and he tells me he's like, he gets really scared. So I was like, "Oh, no, it's fine. She's just a little black lab. She's harmless." And he says to me, he's an African man from Africa originally, has an accent. And he says, 7 years ago, he got chased by someone's German Shepherd and broke his ankle and was out of work for 6 months. And since then, he's just terrified of pretty much all dogs. So everyone has, I guess, their own stigmas, whether they naturally love dogs and they see a dog and they want to just touch it, and there are those who just stay away from me, stay on the other side of the street, and don't come near me. But in general, tame dogs are certainly permitted to own. So take a deep breath. Our dogs are probably mutter in that sense. Okay, owning a dog is done. Moving on to feeding dogs. Okay, dogs do eat a lot. As much as you feed them, they'll pretty much eat. That's what I've learned in the last couple months. So one of the main halachas that most of us have at least heard in passing by is that a person shouldn't start a meal without feeding his animal first. In fact, it's a Gemara, and the Gemara derives this from a Pesach, which is talking about Hashem's bracha to the land of Israel, and he says, "I will give grass in your fields for your animals, and you shall eat and be satisfied." So from the fact that the feeding of the animals comes before the eating of the people in this pasuk, it's an asmachta, it's an allusion that one should feed his animal before feeding himself. Now the question ensues from there whether or not this is a mitzvah or whether it's what's called a midat chasidus, which is something which is not necessarily a requirement, but something which, if it's done, is praiseworthy. So it might not matter. I mean, it's not a hard thing to do to feed your animals first, but someone's going to come in. Okay. So there are opinions on both sides. So basically, the Rambam. Let me just get this out. Okay, so the Rambam thinks that to be the Hasidus, that's a nice thing to do, but one may eat before feeding his pet. Whereas the Magen Avraham and other poskim think it's actually forbidden. So what it comes out is probably a Isser de Rabbanan to eat before feeding your pet. Now, a few caveats. One, this doesn't apply to drinking. So sitting down for a cup of water or anything, there's no consideration of having to give your pet water first. And secondly, it only applies to when your dog is hungry. So dogs are always hungry, but what I read about what this means is that if you usually feed your dog at 5 p.m. and you sit down to have a late lunch at 2:30 or 3, so technically you haven't fed your dog yet for their next feeding period, but they're still far enough away from their feeding period where you don't have to feed them first. So, but if you sit down at 6 p.m. for dinner and you haven't fed your dog yet, his 5 o'clock meal, then there's a problem of eating before feeding your animal. It's counterintuitive, I think, this personally, because as much as our religion, I think, would try to elevate human life far above animal life, and that could be a way of showing it, would be to feed yourself first. But it's interesting that we have this almost strange Indian to take care of our pets before ourselves, which just hit me in a strange way. Okay, next.
Can I ask a question?
Sure thing.
Is it possible that the halakha there is only referring to work animals and animals that are used for mizonos and sustenance as opposed to pets?
I don't know. I can't imagine why they would distinguish between work animals and household pets. It seems like it is I was saying that the pasuk itself is referring to animals that you own. It's possible. I don't know. Okay, so the next issue that dog owners confront is the kashrut of pet food, which the OU has yet to step in and to kasher dog food, and nor should they, as we'll find out. That would be worse, actually. So the biggest issue that faces us is basar b'cholov, which is mixing meat and milk. So the Torah mentions don't cook a kid in its mother's milk 3 times in the Torah, which gives us our 3 fundamental prohibitions when it comes to basar b'cholov. That's don't cook it, don't eat it, and don't derive benefit from it. So in this case here, if we assume that our dog food is basar b'cholov, do we call feeding our pets benefiting? The answer among halakhic poskim is yes. Certainly feeding pets does give satisfaction to the owner and is called benefit. But the problem is, not the problem, but a caveat is that on this previous slide, this third isser, not benefiting from basar b'cholov, only applies to what we call basar b'cholov de'oraisa, which is meat and milk mixtures, which are prohibited on a Torah level. So what kind of meat and milk is prohibited on a Torah level? That's only meat and milk from kosher animals. So according to most poskim, that when you have a kosher animal like a cow and kosher milk like cow's milk, when that's mixed together and cooked in a way which is halakhically called cooking, that's called basar b'cholov, and that's what's forbidden from feeding to your dog and getting benefit from. However, 2 things that help us. One is many dog food recipes are made of things like horse meat, a much cheaper kind of meat, which I think is made of scraps of carcasses that are more available. So that's not kosher, and there's no worry there about basar b'cholov de'oraisa. And there's a further leniency which is possible to use, but it's the Rambam. The Rambam writes that, do we consider even kosher animals that are slaughtered unkosherly, are those called, is that called basar b'cholov de'oraisa? So meaning you have a kosher cow, it gives us kosher milk, yet the way it was shechted, it wasn't shechted, it was killed in some other means that make it not kosher for us to eat, but still a kosher animal. Is that still subject to the prohibition of basar b'cholov de'oraisa? So the Rambam says no, it's not subject to basar b'cholov de'oraisa, and therefore, if we can assume that probably all commercial dog food is not made from kosher slaughtered animals, then we can assume that there's no issue of feeding it to our dogs. That opinion is a minority opinion, and so it's best not to rely on it. But between that and the fact that most dog food is not made from kosher meat in the first place, we probably get around that issue pretty well. So now
does that imply that we can feed our animals non-kosher meat like from a hazer or that kind of thing?
Yeah, in fact, we'll get to it later. But one of the mitzvahs, the Torah actually tells us that as hakaras hatov, for dogs not barking upon leaving Mitzrayim when we left, being loyal to the Jews, we have a mitzvah to feed them the unkosher meat that ends up in our hands. So the non-kosher meat that we end up with is actually meant to go to dogs. So yes. The prohibition of benefiting from non-kosher food only applies to basar b'cholov, not what we call treif. So basar b'cholov has a special stringency where we don't even get benefit from it, but other non-kosher food, there's possibilities to get benefit from it in different ways. Okay, chametz. chametz, this is the big issue, and I didn't know about this issue much until a couple of years ago. I was in Atlanta for Pesach, and the Lewises, Leah and Andy Lewis, asked me to dog sit their dogs, Chip and Muffin, and there was instructions that the dog food that I would have thought I would feed them, the big giant bag, was locked up in a cabinet, and they had these really gross cans of wet food that I would feed the dogs. And then it occurred to me that it's probably kosher Pesach, or at least it doesn't have chametz in it. So this is a tough one because we know there's a huge chumrah on chametz on Pesach, that there is a big stringency of getting any benefit from chametz, especially on Pesach itself. So there's really no way around it, but feeding a pet does constitute benefit, as we said earlier, and most pet food does have wheat or some kind of what's the word? Whey. Definitely a lot of whey, wheat, different derivatives of chametz, and that would be a problem. So there are, especially wet dog food and wet foods that don't contain chametz. But the problem now is owning chametz. So can you even keep your 24-pound bag of dog food in your garage during Pesach? So what you should do is include it in the sale to the non-Jew, which is definitely possible, or you should remove it from your property entirely and basically get it out of your rishus. Now on the bottom I wrote the possibility of selling your pet to a non-Jew. So it's, hey Isaac, welcome to class. My brother over there. Selling your pet to a non-Jew during Pesach is a possibility. It's also not recommended because instructing a non-Jew to feed chametz to your dog is also benefiting you in some form. But there is a way, if your dog or pet must eat chametz, to do sort of a give your animal into the property of someone else who's not Jewish and let them do their thing without much. So Pesach is a problem for dogs and animals, and best to get food without chametz. Okay, moving on to Shabbos issues. This is, I think, the anxiety of most dog owners, especially at the beginning, is what to do with all of the myths and hearsay about Shabbos. Okay, I'll start with the big one. Why not? Muktzah. Are dogs muktzah? I would love to just say no. That'll make things much easier. But the Gemara says that animals are muktzah in general. So animals are muktzah, not just muktzah, but they're the most severe type of muktzah of the 9 types. And that is called muktzah machmas gufo, which is an animal in itself, its entire function is muktzah. It shouldn't be moved on Shabbos. Same category as sticks, stones, pine cones, nature items that serve no purpose. Now, it's kind of offensive for dog owners because we would assume that we know that dogs are highly competent and serve many purposes. They serve as a vacuum cleaner, and they sometimes catch squirrels and all kinds of stuff. But the question that we have to ask on this Gemara is, what if an animal has a particular purpose? Does that remove its muktzah status? So is it possible that our modern day pets are different than cattle grazing in someone's field, and therefore would they no longer have a muktzah status? So there's 2 options. Either the answer is yes, enough of a need, enough of a function would take away its muktzah status, or there's something called a lo plug rabbanan in halacha, which is that regardless of the circumstances, when the rabbanan make a decree like muktzah, it sticks regardless of your particular animal's need. So the poskim debate that. And the question of whether or not our animals are different, we have a split between the major poskim, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rav Yosef, about whether or not we can consider our animals' function of companionship, which some would say is actually substantial, as removing it from being a muktzah. Now, this is complicated. Just a minute. It's complicated because in the Gemara itself that we quoted earlier, it quotes a case of an animal that its purpose is to calm down young children from crying. It's a useful animal, and then what it does is it pacifies children. Yet that wasn't enough of a tzorech, enough of a need to take away its muktzah status. So is there enough of a need? Is there some threshold that we can say that if an animal is this useful, it can no longer be muktzah, or if it's beneath that, or is it always muktzah? So I took from a much more modern, not modern day posek of Aaron Lichtenstein, who passed away only about 4 years ago, maybe. He says one should basically try to be strict for himself and minimize moving his animals, his dogs, during Shabbos. But those who are lenient, you shouldn't make a big deal of it because there is what to rely upon. There is a lenient opinion. I'm going to present that Rav Lichtenstein does recommend not moving your animals intentionally for no purpose. However, there is a possibility that our animals are considered to be like toys, and that they no longer have the din of a behemoth of an animal, but they're more like items that we play with. There's also a possibility that animals need to be played with for their own health. And since there is a exception that in the case of tsar balei chayim, an animal distress, you can basically you can violate muktzah. So if we can make a case that a dog is in such need for attention, it needs to be pet and it needs to be moved around and played with on Shabbos, then maybe you could say that you can be lenient. Okay, so that would be muktzah, moving a dog. And lastly, there's an issue that we're familiar with called hotzah, which is carrying. So carrying, most of us live within an eruv, and we don't think about it too often. But we say in our Shabbos day Kiddush, we say, Lo ta'aseh kol malacha, ata u'vencho v'techa, avdecha ve'mascha, uvehemtecha v'gercha shebisharecha. That we don't do malacha. You, your son, your daughter, your eved, your female eved, and your animals. That in some sense, our animals are basically supposed to keep Shabbos as well as us. And that's confusing because why should my dog keep Shabbos? But what that means is that it's prohibited to have your animal do something which you couldn't do on Shabbos. So that does not, it's not so relevant except for in the case of carrying. So if you're in an area without an eruv, if you're away on vacation at a mountain house and there's no eruv around you, what about your dog's tag? Your dog is wearing a tag that has its name on it and your phone number on it. That is presumably non-essential for the dog, and therefore your dog is carrying in a place where you yourself couldn't carry. So it's a real question. And what comes out is that if we decide that dog tags are for the benefit of the dog itself, then dogs can carry. The only prohibition of your animals breaking Shabbos is if it's not for their own benefit. If it's for the owner's benefit, then it's a problem. So many poskim say that no, a dog tag is for the human. The human doesn't want to lose his dog. It would be a huge loss if he loses his dog or his animal. So the dog tag is purely for the owner's sake, and therefore it should be a problem of carrying on Shabbos. However, if someone Auerbach makes a point, and very sensitive point that he makes, is that in fact the dog tag benefits the animal just as much as the person, because a lost dog will often be put to death or even put in a kennel without being identified as someone's pet, and the dog tag could save the animal from being put to death. So you can make an argument that a dog tag actually is mutter for dogs to wear outside of an eruv on Shabbos. However, he says sometimes there are tags which are, I haven't seen them recently, but there are dog tags that just tell you the immunizations and the like county fees being paid. There's like an engraving of just some coding that is meant for the county. So that would be of no purpose to the animal itself and should be worn. So perhaps if you're away with your pet, not in an eruv, you should maybe take off their tag or their collar before going outside. That's a question that I need to dig into a little more, but very interesting. And the last malacha that we encounter on Shabbos is tzeda, which is trapping. The trapping, the Shemir Shabbos Kilchaso, a sefer which is widely relied upon for Hilchos Shabbos, says that tzeda is any act of an individual that an individual does to eliminate the freedom of an animal. So the quintessential example of this is putting a cup over a fly on your table and keeping it there so it doesn't bother you. So trapping an animal is a malacha d'oraisa and a big problem. Now the question is, does this apply to our pets? Are our pets, are they animals in that same sense, and B is what we do, which is keeping them in the house, is that called trapping. The Mishnah in Shabbos itself says that closing the door of one's house on an animal in a way that keeps it inside, it actually is Seder. So how do we get around that? Okay, so the poskim bring up three main categories of dogs, of animals in terms of trapping. So one of them, the two extremes, are either animals that somebody would have to go and basically hunt to catch. It take a great deal of effort to catch the animal. That would be things like deer, anything wild that you have to either hunt or to trap. So that's one extreme. The other extreme are animals that are completely obedient and don't leave their owner's side, and they'll return to their owner without any kind of resistance. So those are pretty clear cut. The ones that are hard to trap are forbidden to trap, and the ones who are entirely submissive and obedient can be basically closed into quarters. However, what about animals that will return eventually, possibly, but with some resistance? Now that is probably the case of most of our animals. Sorry. Okay, so most of our animals fall into that category. So here are the main tips that are basically given to us to resolve Seder in our cases. So first of all, if you have an animal which is completely non-obedient and wild, you should not put him in a situation where you'll be enclosing him on Shabbos. If Shabbos starts and the dog's already enclosed, that helps a lot, but to actively close a gate on it, 10 minutes. Oh, 10 minutes. Oh, okay, great. That flew by. Okay, so the main eitzes, the main advice is when putting on a leash on your dog. When putting a leash on your dog, what you should do is have the house door already closed. If the door is open and the dog might run outside had you not put a leash on him, that could be an issue of Seder. Another piece of advice is do not remove a leash while you're walking the dog on Shabbos, because reattaching the leash afterwards might be getting in the way of trapping the animal from running around freely as it was prior to taking the leash off. And the third thing is that apparently when someone's entering a house where there's a dog, if they basically slide in and their body's filling the gap between the door and the doorway, is not called trapping. So that's always a possibility when entering or leaving a house with a dog in it without calling it trapping. Basically, you want to only trap a dog when they're in a situation where they're already enclosed. So if all the house doors are closed and you're putting a leash on a dog, there's no extra element of trapping. If the house is wide open and the dog would otherwise be trying to leave the house had you not been leashing it, then we run into a problem. Okay, spaying and neutering. Big issue. Didn't know about this until recently. But the way it goes is that all professionals recommend that you spay and neuter your dog, both for health reasons, for behavior reasons, and it's become common practice for population control, all kinds of reasons why it's the norm to spay and neuter dogs and cats and animals. I'm surprised that there aren't more like active groups against this, like they are for circumcision of Jews, but for some reason, everyone seems to agree that this is the way to do it. Now, the problem is that there's a pasuk in the Torah. I actually have, from a pasuk in the Torah, we have a halacha in Shulchan Aruch which says it's forbidden to remove the reproductive organs of any human or animal. Any kind of castration, removal of the physical organs is a necessary. It's basically, if you think about it, you're getting in the way of Hashem's plan. Animals have the right to reproduce just as we do, and it's not proper for us to limit that in any way. It's possible that female dogs are less of an issue, only d'Rabbanan. But as we're on the bottom of the slide, what we normally do with issues that need to get done and we can't do it, we just ask our local non-Jew. But here's the problem. Very crazy. So we at least are familiar with the concept of 7 Noahide Laws. I couldn't name them until I looked this up. They're not so known to me, but none of the 7 Noahide Laws include castrating a dog. However, surprisingly, there is a memra. There is an opinion in the Gemara and Sanhedrin which actually suggests Rav Chidkiah, you see in the right-hand box, he adds to one of the 7 Noahide Laws, sirus, which is castration. Now, even though Rav Chidkiah's opinion doesn't become codified in mainstream halacha, the Beis Shmuel and other poskim say that we should actually take it seriously, and we should avoid asking non-Jews to perform sirus, spaying and neutering, because it's possible that we are basically aiding that non-Jew in performing an avera for that non-Jew. So one of the seven Noahide laws. However, we're not going to go so far as to stop a non-Jew from doing it on his own accord. So this is a problem. Okay, so there are a few ways to get around this. The reason why it's not a huge problem is because in most cases, when you adopt a dog or puppy or a cat, it already comes spayed and neutered from the clinic. So there's not much that the human has to do, the owner has to do to get that done. It comes into play when someone is getting a dog from a breeder, and then they have to manually get it done. So the ways that you can do it is there's a possibility of something called lifnei to lifnei iver, which is basically a twice removed asking of a non-Jew. So you sell your animal to a non-Jew, then you ask then you have that non-Jew ask another non-Jew to perform the sirus, the spaying and neutering. It's less of an issue than asking a non-Jew. However, when this is mentioned in the poskim, they don't assume that you're going to take the animal back afterwards. So I mean, this is meant more for commercial animals, but for a pet, not sure if this would cut it in terms of taking the animal back for your own possession afterwards. The second possibility is sterilizing through drugs and hormonal means of sterilizing a dog without physical castration. So that, that's not us, sir. Question if that actually accomplishes the task of minimizing aggressive behavior the way that is recommended by vets and stuff. And then the other one, the third one, which I recommend if you buy a dog, is basically buy it already doctored up. There are plenty of options, plenty of clinics that you can adopt that already have dogs spayed neutered just from 8 weeks old, the minute that they're eligible for it, and that's a great option for Jews. My friend's dad's a vet, and he says that it's not so common anymore that he has to do spaying and neutering because most clinics do it already, which is great. Dog control, not so relevant to us. I've seen it a few times in Israel, actually, but there was a big question during Moshe Feinstein's time of whether someone could bring a guide dog into shul. There's a lot of machlokas. Rav Kasher, who on the left-hand column wrote the Torah Shlema. Actually, his granddaughter was my Hebrew teacher at YU, wonderful lady. And he says that no, you can see from the fact there's a pasuk which prohibits a person from using money that was gained from selling a dog. Using that money for a korban is aser. So therefore, it must be dogs are aser to bring into the temple, and therefore should not be brought into shuls at all. Moshe Feinstein gave a famous tshuva which allowed, definitely in the case of a seeing eye dog, to enter shul. And he there's a question on Rav Kasher, which is who says that things that are aser in the temple mean they're aser in a shul. There are many things that you can't do in a temple that you can do in a shul. You can't wear shoes in the temple. You wear shoes in a shul. So it's not necessarily a proper analogy or a diuk to say that just because dogs are forbidden in the temple means that they're forbidden in a shul. The common practice is that most communities would allow a service dog into a shul. There's many of them keep them in the back of the shul and make sure that they're appropriately behaved, but there's not much of a problem with guide dogs. They're understood to be pretty essential to people who need to see. Okay, and last is the soapbox. Okay, so the relationship between the Jewish communities and dogs is definitely complicated. On the right side, on that side of this page, I put up a few articles from Israel, the city of Elad, which is one of the first, I guess, fully Haredi and basically Haredi run neighborhoods in the Shomron. They banned all dogs. It was a big deal in Israel, and not everyone agreed with it, but they basically followed the opinion that dogs are completely forbidden to own. Now this makes sense because Elad is run by a Sephardic rabbinic leadership, and the Rambam is the main posek that does not give permission basically to own a dog. He doesn't agree with the fact that second Gemara from the beginning of Rabbi Yishmael, he doesn't believe that is the way that we follow. So there's a huge stigma on dogs in Israel right now, especially among the Haredi community. In Brooklyn, definitely, as I mentioned earlier, on the top left, there's this great article of a man who does dog walking in a community which is Williamsburg, which doesn't approve of it, being kind of iconoclastic. And then so Jews and dogs have a relationship which is definitely tenuous. I'm gonna just present to you some well-known opinions against dogs. And by the way, I want to just preface that this is totally what I'm about to show you is I'm not disparaging any of these poskim. I actually agree with many of them that there is an element of impurity with dogs, and that's something which is not proper. But Rabbi Vemden, who we saw earlier in the presentation, he's very outspoken that owning a dog is a waste of time. It's bittul Torah, and it's actually like chukas goyim. It's the ways of non-Jews. He calls them the uncircumcised. It's pretty goyish. And I'll give him that because it certainly is. Rav Hutner writes beautifully in the Pachad Yitzchak that dogs represent the meat of chutzpah, that their essence is chutzpah, and also the way in which they rise up to be man's best friend is the very epitome of the chutzpah. You know, how could such an animal think that he could do such a thing? In Kabbalah in general, in Kabbalah, dogs are they're impure. They're the biggest source of tumah, the huge source of tumah. They're demonic and not meant to basically be owned by people. However, we also know from the Zohar itself, which is Kabbalah, that kelev is from the words kol lev, a little illusion that dogs are full of heart. They're faithful, and they are great animals to have around. The Torah commands us to actually reward dogs for their obedience during Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the Sefer Hasidim says that you can actually learn good midos from dogs. So just as the last 2 minutes of the shir, I want to wrap up with my own kind of take on dogs, because my feelings are mixed. I love animals. I actually love dogs, and I've felt the tension of basically blurring the lines between a pet and a creature that you really love. So here's what I want to say. There's the model of what I call Old Yeller, old movie in the 60s of a yellow dog. And he was a quintessential family farm dog, loved by the family, but undoubtedly a dog. And then you have on this end of the spectrum, a lot of the modern day dogs and sweaters in Central Park, where the dogs are carried around in purses wherever they go, and they buy clothes for their dogs, and they kind of become a member of the family. Now, I think there's a difference between the two, and the latter, the one in which we elevate dogs to the status of household members that sometimes even get in the way of our relationships with people. I think that's probably against Torah Hashkafa, and that is the chutzpah of dogs that I think Rav Hutner was referring to. Whereas keeping a dog in its proper place for the purpose of companionship, entertainment, raising your children in a way that's in a healthy relationship with dogs, there are ways in which you can keep a dog as a dog. And I'll be the first to say it's a big challenge, because we start to personify our dogs. We talk to them. We like them to be in our beds with us and licking us and all kinds of things that blur the lines between a dog and something else. Now, I want to have one more thought that was good. Dogs. Okay. No, I lost it. Okay, but dogs are not going anywhere. They're part of our community, both in and out of the Jewish part of the community. And it is it's probably our challenge to keep them at bay the way they should be. What I want to share is that my mom has 3 dogs, and she told me recently that they had a trainer come to the house because she's training them to be more obedient. And he says that most of the issues with dogs are really from the owner and not from the dog. Dogs know that they're supposed to be lowly, on the ground, not on the furniture, not on the bed. Yet it's the humans that often blur the line and show the dog that he can be on the chair, on the bed, on the table, eating human food. And a lot of times it's our own boundaries as owners that get in the way of our dog's behavior. So not to be afraid to keep a dog, meaning sometimes in its crate, sometimes on the ground, is not something that's going to hurt the dog's feelings. It's not going to damage your relationship with the dog. It's really going to help us. So B'ezras Hashem, we should embrace the gift that we have of pets, and in a way that's halakhically sound as well as healthy emotionally, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks for watching, everyone.
I mean, what I meant was thank you, Simon. So, Yasher Kayak to you. And first thing I'm going to do, Simon, is I'm going to take away your
Can you hear me, Simon?
co-host.
This is Richard. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Crone.
When do you become a rabbi? Are you a rabbi?
You did a good job.
I'm going to plead the fourth, plead the fifth on this one.
He is a rabbi. He really is.
Listen,
Oh,
I
you
didn't,
did
I
great.
didn't,
When did you grow up?
I know it's been too long, Mr. Crone.
You didn't ask me. Good, I didn't grant permission for this. Good for you, man. Proud of you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the audience.
Can I
Thank
ask
you, Simon. Yasher Kayak. So we
His
just
father is shepping nachas right now.
yeah.
His father looks like his twin brother. This is the crazy thing.
Ooh,
Wow,
I never saw anything like it.
you
Who said
love
that?
to hear
Who's
that.
saying that?
I love to hear that.
So Simon, that was great. I am a dog lover, and which is probably makes me, besides being I think the only woman on screen, or maybe not, but you know, that makes me a standout in this crowd. I am totally a dog lover, and I loved your talk.
Thank you. It helped me also.
And her dog loves your talk. You know.
I've been avoiding this topic for myself for like the plague, and because I didn't want to have to give her up. But I'm happy to hear that happy to learn that it's very doable. So.
Did a great job. Great job.
Great.